Alright, so I've been seeing this theory absolutely everywhere lately, and I mean everywhere. Reddit threads, post forum, comment section on every other One Piece video I watch, and once I actually looked into it, I think I got it. This might be one of the wildest theories this fandom has cooked. We're talking about the infamous IMU is a parrot theory. Yes, you heard that right, and before you close the tab, stick with me, because there's actually more evidence here than you'd expect. And I want to lay it all out, figure it out, honestly, on whether it holds up or not. So here's the twist too, this theory does not travel alone. It's paired with the second connected theory we're going to get into towards the end of the video, so hold up. Welcome back to Theory Theory No Me, the show where we take the internet's biggest theories and break them all the way down. Let's get into it. Let's start with the two most basic reference points people bring up, Emu's name and Emu's actual physical shape. We'll start with the shape. Emu has always had this very specific, very deliberate silhouette, and that silhouette shatters the moment we actually see Emu step out of Egghead in that far more devil-like form. How does a parrot become that? We'll circle back to that possibly a zoan angle in a second, but let's stay on for the visual for now. There are a bunch of fan-made designs floating around trying to explain how the parrot under the robe concept could actually work visually, and honestly, I'm fairly on board with the core idea. That silhouette we've been staring at for years might genuinely be hiding something completely different body underneath, and I mean that loosely, because we've barely seen anything concrete until the big reveal moment. So my read is that Emu might have had an entirely separate physical form we haven't been shown yet, separate from whatever we're looking at now. That lines up with a few other dangling threads too. The fact that Emu has to return to marry Geos, the fact that Emu is shown bleeding through the transformation, and that brief flashback where Emu is thinking about Joy Boy and appears tiny. Some fans read that as Emu perched right into Joy Boy's arm, like a literal parrot on a pirate's shoulder. Is this hard proof? Not even close. But it's kind of a detail that, if the theory turns out true, would actually click into the place pretty cleanly. Now onto the name, and this is where things get a little more linguistically interesting. You'll notice that when Emu refers to themselves, they use the word om. If you take that O with a macron over it, that elongated O sound in Japanese, that character actually translates to king. Now stack that O together with mu, you get omu, which is the Japanese word for parrot. That's actually a decent little nugget, not a proof, but a real tangible wordplay connection, which is more than most this theory usually gives us. And it's worth pointing out. The parrot is the quintessential pirate story animal. It's a stereotype. In a series about pirates that's gone long without ever giving a parrot a meaningful role, there's a real argument that Oda's been saving this slot for something bigger. It's also worth mentioning where this theory actually originated. The very first version of it I ever read didn't just claim that Emu was a parrot. It claimed Emu was specifically a parrot that used to belong to Davy Jones. And at that point, the theory is stretching so far past what we can support that it's fair to just set that particular branch aside entirely. When you're already working with thin evidence, bolting on a Davy Jones ownership angle on top of it just turns speculation into fan fiction. But that parrot as a pirate archetype angle, that one I'll keep, because it also gives us a clean in-universe justification for why a parrot specifically would end up doing what Emu does. A famously intelligent animal, watching humanity's worst impulses play out for centuries, deciding to take control. Narratively, that's not a bad hook at all. There are a couple more soft references worth flagging before we move into the stuff that actually resolves real mysteries. First, Othello. We've talked about this reference before. Emu's technique is called domi reversi, a direct note to the board game Reversi, more commonly known as Othello. Now in Shakespeare's Othello, one of the major players is a character named Lago. And thanks largely to Disney, Lago is a household name for a very specific reason. He's the parrot in Aladdin. Is that a smoking gun? No. But between Othello-flavored move name and a Lago equals parrot pop culture connection, that's another thread the community's been pulling on, and it's not baseless. It's just circumstantial. Now let's get into the stuff that's a little bit more grounded, because the next one is not just wordplay. There is a color spread from chapter 937 back in the Water 7 era. In it, the straw hats are drawn surrounded by a bunch of different parrots. Parrots being another recurring animal motif we'll come back to. But one parrot specifically, positioned near the bottom of the spread, right next to Nami, is drawn wearing a crown on its head. Now Oda has planted future referencing imagery in color spreads before. The most famous example, and you'll remember this one, is the Ace of Spades card with a skull inside it, paired with Luffy screaming up at the sky. A direct, deliberate foreshadow of Ace's death, years before it happened. Oda has documented track records of hiding this kind of things in plain sight. So a crowned parrot sitting quietly in the background color spread. That's exactly the kind of detail this fandom has learned to take seriously. Now let's move on to the mysteries this theory would actually solve, not just gesture at, but genuinely explain it. First off, The celestial dragon's logo. This is one of the biggest unresolved symbols of the entire world government mystery box. And honestly, we should probably get an explanation someday for why they're even called celestial dragons in the first place. But let's set that aside for now. We've seen this symbol most prominently branded onto slaves, as opposed to more formal world government emblem used in more official capacities, which is noticeably different. The mark burned into slaves is unmistakably a paw print, a circle in the center, 3 triangular toes pointing up, 1 pointing down. 4 digits total, which lines up to the typical foot structure of a parrot, or really any bird. We've asked ourselves for years where the symbol actually comes from, especially considering how deliberate Oda is about symbolism throughout this series. You've all noticed it. It's relentless. This particular mark has never been explained. And recently we've even touched on a possible dragon connection, given that IMU refers to Nika D. Roger, refers to dragon's lineage as a traitor in certain contexts. At some point, this symbol has to get an actual explanation. This theory would explain it cleanly. It would simply be reframing that brand as an act of submission, a parrot literally putting its claw on you, a mark that's permanent since it's seared into your skin with heat. Clean, simple, and thematically consistent. And then there is a real mystery, chapters 1185 and 1186. This is during Brook's flashback, the moment Brook walks into the room and finds Gyokimaru, who has just killed his own father, standing alongside the man who is in fact also his biological father. There is a third figure in that room, clearly some kind of dark, bird-shaped. We see a beak, 2 eyes, unmistakably a vein. Then in chapter 1186, we get a better look, and from that head of the shadowy bird-like figure emerges the unmistakable silhouette of IMU, evidently the one responsible for using Domi Reversi on Gyokimaru and his father. This bird figure is never explained. Some fans initially assumed it was one of the Gorosei. But here's the problem with that read. We know exactly what Gorosei looks like. We've seen them clearly, repeatedly. So why would Oda deliberately obscure this figure into mysterious silhouette if it's just a Gorosei member we already know? That's the kind of scene that either gets clarified in an SBS down the line or gets explained through exactly the kind of theory we're discussing today. So tallying it all up, beyond the softer references, this theory would resolve 2 genuinely unexplained manga mysteries. That's more than most theories in this fandom can claim. Now, let's get into the part of this theory that I actually think is the strongest, and I almost opened the video with it, but I wanted to save it because it's the bridge to the second theory. Now here's the logic. We know Luffy's devil fruit is the human fruit, model Nika, a mythical zoan sun god model. It's very likely, though, not confirmed, that Imu also ate a human fruit, just a different mythical model tied to a different deity we haven't identified yet. Now, we already know exactly how a human fruit behaves without even bringing mythical variants into it, because it is one of the most iconic devil fruits in the entire series. It's chopper fruit. Chopper is, at his core, a reindeer who ate a human fruit and became part human, part reindeer. That transformation is exactly what gives him his intelligence to speak, to reason, to eventually become the Straw Hat's doctor. You all know Chopper's fruit inside and out at this point. Oda actually addresses this directly in an SBS once. Someone asked him what would happen if a regular human ate chopper fruit, and Oda's answer was that they'd simply become more human. In Luffy's case, since he was already human, the fruit didn't reshape his body. Instead, it layered mythical sun god powers onto him. So, flip that logic, if an animal ate Luffy's fruit or any mythical type human fruit, that animal would gain, likely, the same kind of elevated intelligence Chopper got, gain the ability to speak, and also inherit whatever mythical powers are baked into that specific fruit. I really like this angle because it's not just speculation. It's built on something we've already directly witnessed in the story. It makes the whole story more plausible, and if true, it would genuinely shake up the power structure of the entire series in a huge way. So let's actually tally the whole thing up before we move on to theory number 2. If this turns out to be true, it would be an absolutely massive reveal, and that's exactly why I think it exploded in popularity the way it did. But if I have to be straight with you, the way I always try to be on this channel, this theory doesn't actually bring hard proof, which is what it brings is a handful of references that could be read as an intentional foreshadowing, mainly that color spread and the name-based wordplay we covered in the beginning. And then we have the Brook's flashback chapters with the whole paw print symbol angle, both genuinely unresolved mysteries, sure, but both are also mysteries that could be explained a dozen of other ways that have nothing to do with Imu being a parrot. So I think this is a textbook example of a big international community theory, absolutely loaded with interesting connections, some of them a real stretch, like a parrot as a pirate stereotype. And the deeper you go, the more references stack up. But the actual proof stays sitting at 0. For me, genuinely 0. What I do think is worth pulling out of this whole discussion, and honestly this is the entire point of this format, is the idea of an animal that ate mythical human fruit, like Chopper, but on a mythological scale Chopper never touched. And I'll be honest with you, I'm genuinely torn on how much I'd want this to be true. There's something compelling about an animal that's watched humanity commit horror after horror and decided to take control because it no longer trusts people. That's a really strong story engine. But on the flip side, I've always preferred reading the celestial dragons as humans, specifically because the horrifying things that they do are the things only humans are capable of doing to each other. So, fascinating theory, plenty of real threats to pull on, but personally, it does not win me over completely. It does not fully win me over. Here is the twist I mentioned at the top. The theory didn't originally show up alone. It was written alongside a companion theory about a completely different character. The original post wasn't about Emu. It floated the idea that Joy Boy also might be connected to another classic pirate story animal. Not a parrot this time, but a monkey. Funny enough, when I first read this theory, I was on vacation, and between the two ideas, Emu the parrot and Joy Boy the monkey angle actually grabbed me a little bit more. I found it a slightly more compelling theory. Let's start with the name angle because it's a strong one. We know Luffy's full name is Monkey D. Luffy. The monkey surname is already doing a lot of work. It's a direct nod to the son Wukong, the legendary Monkey King, and by extension, potentially, to Luffy's entire lineage. So, there is a real argument that this surname could trace all the way back to Joy Boy himself being this monkey figure. Then there is a small but sharp detail from the recent chapters. When Joy Boy communicates with Emu through their shared connection, Joy Boy refers to himself by the exact name, Joy Boy. Every single time we've heard this figure referenced, Joy Boy is a term used, which we always assumed was a title, an inherited legacy name, but it's starting to look like that might genuinely be what he called himself. That absence of an actual given name and surname actually strengthens the animal who ate a mythical human fruit. Read a little bit further, because compare that to Emu, who does have a full name and a surname. Emu's surname is Nerona, for record. Joy Boy, having no last name at all, fits the profile of an animal who became human through devil fruit a lot more naturally than it fits an actual human being. And this connects directly to an older theory we've covered before on this channel, one that argues basically the same point. And together we need to go all the way back to Shandora. That's how far back this trail goes. On the Golden Bell of Shandora, there is an entire strip of decorative carvings running across the top, full of different symbols. One of those carvings, according to a huge chunk of fandom, and I'll admit I see it too, looks like monkey, facing directly towards the viewer, tail curving to our left with what looks suspiciously like a hat on its head. Stop me if this is starting to sound too familiar, because that silhouette reads an awful lot like Straw Hat. This image has been picked apart extensively by the community, and I think it's absolutely fair to bring it up anytime this theory comes up. And going back to that chapter, 937, color spread we already discussed, the one with the crowned parrot, there's more in that image worth revisiting. Look closely and you'll spot two parrots, a toucan, and then exactly one more animal that stands apart from the rest, aside from Chopper, obviously being different from everyone. That animal is a monkey, wearing a pirate hat, positioned directly above Luffy in the artwork. So just like we tallied references for the Emu side, it's only fair to tally them here too. And if even one of these two theories, the parrot or the monkey, turns out to be accurate, that alone would be a massive reveal. If both of them turn out to be true at the same time, that might be one of the single biggest twists in the entire history of the series. So let's wrap this one too, because I actually find this version a little bit more convincing. For one, it circles right back to Chopper human fruit parallel we covered earlier, which I already said I really like, but there's also a deeper layer here tied to humanity itself and what Joy Boy actually represents. What is Joy Boy at his core? He's framed as the very first pirate, and for Luffy, being a pirate means being free. Becoming the Pirate King means becoming the freest man in the world. So the idea of an animal, specifically a monkey, teaching an entire species of human what real freedom actually looks like, when we're the ones who arguably lean more towards Emu's controlling worldview. That's generally a powerful piece of thematic storytelling. And practically speaking, it also makes the animal becomes human logic easier for Oda to justify visually and narratively. Though again, we've already seen this exact concept play out with the reindeer, so there is a precedent either way. Parrots are also famously intelligent animals, so if both of the theories are true, Oda would have picked two animals that are genuinely believable candidates for gaining human-level cognition. Still worth repeating one more time, we've already watched this exact transformation happen with Chopper, so the concept itself isn't new or groundbreaking for this story. And that's everything I've got on the both sides of this one. This video ran a little bit longer than usual, but honestly it needed to. This is one of the most heavily discussed theories the community has produced in a long time, and it deserved the full breakdown. If you've got a theory you want broken down like this one, drop it in the comments. Those are generally where most of those episodes come from. And if you enjoyed this deep dive, hit that like button, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you soon with more content as always, all about One Piece.